I stood there on the sun-kissed sands of a Florida beach resort, the ocean waves crashing gently in the background like a soothing symphony that masked the turmoil brewing beneath the surface. The salty mist spraying lightly on my face, as if nature itself was trying to warn me of the impending disaster. The sunset painted the sky in breathtaking hues of fiery orange, soft pink, and deep purple, a picture-perfect scene that seemed straight out of a romantic postcard, with the colors blending seamlessly into the horizon, where the sea met the sky in an. When my 7-year-old grandson tugged at the hem of my floral dress, his small voice trembling with an urgency that sent chills down my spine despite the warm tropical air, as he whispered about a crumpled label he had discovered buried in the warm sand, a label that could have ended his young life in tragedy, I knew this wedding was no fairy tale full of happily ever afters. It was a carefully constructed trap, orchestrated by the groom himself, driven by hidden debts and a desperate greed that knew no bounds. A plot so vile it defied the beauty around us. What happened next not only shattered the ceremony into pieces, but also exposed a monster hiding in plain sight, ultimately rebuilding our fractured family from the ashes of betrayal with bonds stronger than before. Stick around, because this harrowing story of deception, unwavering courage, and hard-won redemption will leave you questioning every I do you've ever heard, wondering if love can sometimes be the perfect disguise for something far more sinister, lurking just below the surface like a shark in calm waters. The salty breeze whipped through my graying hair as I adjusted my wide-brimmed hat, shielding my weary eyes from the relentless glare of the Florida sun that beat down mercilessly on the beach. It was a perfect day for a wedding, or so it seemed on the surface, with the clear blue sky dotted with fluffy white clouds and the gentle lapping of waves providing a natural soundtrack. The Palm Breeze Resort in Miami Beach was buzzing with life, the sounds of seagulls calling overhead, mingling with the distant hum of jet skis slicing through the sparkling turquoise waters like playful dolphins chasing each other. White folding chairs were lined up in precise, neat rows on the golden sand, each one adorned with delicate seashell garlands handcrafted by local artisans, and tropical flowers, vibrant hibiscus in shades of crimson red and exotic orchids in electric purples that swayed gently in the wind, releasing a sweet floral scent that mixed with the ocean air. Guests mingled casually in their light sundresses and crisp linen shirts, sipping colorful Mai Tais from hollowed-out coconut shells garnished with pineapple slices, their laughter echoing like joyful bells, as if life couldn't possibly get any better or more carefree, unaware of the storm about to break. I was Betty Thompson, a 62-year-old grandmother from the bustling suburbs of Tampa, where the humidity clings to your skin like a second layer and the traffic never seems to end. And this was my daughter Emily's big day, her second chance at happiness after years of heartache that had left deep scars on all of us. Emily, my only child, looked absolutely radiant in her flowing white gown, the intricate lace hem brushing softly against the powdery sand as she walked down the makeshift aisle scattered with fragrant rose petals and soft pastels, her veil fluttering lightly like a butterfly's wings. At 35 years old, she had been through hell and back, enduring losses that would break most people, facing days where the weight of grief seemed insurmountable, and I truly believed this marriage to Dr. Marcus Hale would finally bring her the peace and stability she so desperately deserved, a new beginning under the Florida sun. Marcus, with his sharply chiseled jaw that gave him a movie star look, distinguished salt and pepper hair that added an air of sophisticated wisdom, and that suave, disarming smile that could charm even the most skeptical shark in the business world, was a highly respected cardiologist from Orlando, known for his groundbreaking work at heart transplants. He seemed perfect on paper, too perfect, as I would soon discover in the most
horrifying way imaginable, a facade that hid a rotten core.
Beside me sat my precious grandson, little Tommy, fidgeting restlessly with his tiny clip-on tie that kept coming loose no matter how many times I fixed it with my arthritic fingers. At just 7 years old, he was the spitting image of his late father. Wild, curly brown hair that bounced with every movement, big blue eyes that sparkled with innocent curiosity about the world around him, from the tiniest seashell to the vast ocean, and an infectious laugh that could melt even the iciest of hearts on a cold winter day back home. But Tommy wasn't laughing today. His usual joy was replaced by a quiet unease that I couldn't quite place, his little legs swinging nervously under the chair. He had asthma, the severe kind that required him to carry an inhaler everywhere he went, a constant and sobering reminder of how fragile and precious life could be, especially for a child so young and vulnerable in a world full of unexpected dangers. I patted his small hand gently, feeling the warmth of his tiny fingers intertwining with mine, and leaned down to whisper, "You okay, buddy? Anything bothering you at all?" He nodded slowly, but his eyes darted around nervously, scanning the crowd and the surroundings, as if sensing the storm brewing beneath the calm facade of the celebration, his intuition sharper than any adult's. The ceremony began with a lively steel drum band playing a soft, melodic rendition of "Here Comes the Sun," a fitting choice for a beachside vow exchange that promised new beginnings and endless horizons stretching out into the sea. Emily's voice trembled with raw emotion as she recited her heartfelt promises to Marcus, her hand shaking slightly as she held his, her words carrying over the gentle waves. "In sickness and in health," she said, her eyes locked on his with a mix of hope and vulnerability that made my heart ache with both pride and worry. Marcus echoed the words back to her, his voice as smooth as silk and as confident as ever. But there was something in his tone, a subtle undercurrent of detachment that, now in hindsight, feels like a warning I should have heeded from the start. As the officiate droned on about love, commitment, and forever, his words blending with the sound of the ocean, Tommy leaned over to me again, his breath coming in quick and shallow bursts that immediately set off alarm bells in my mind, a grandmother's instinct kicking in. "Grandma," he whispered urgently, tugging at my sleeve with surprising strength for such a small boy. "I found something weird in the sand. It's right under our chairs, and it looks scary, like something from a mystery book." My heart skipped a beat, pounding hard against my chest like a drum in a thunderstorm, the sound echoing in my ears over the music. Kids say the darndest things, often imagining adventures where none exist, turning sticks into swords or clouds into dragons. But Tommy's tone was deadly serious, laced with a fear that was far too real for his age, his wide eyes pleading for me to believe him. I glanced down discreetly, pretending to adjust my sandals so as not to draw attention from the other guests who were focused on the couple. And there it was, a crumpled piece of paper, half buried in the warm, shifting sand like an ominous message in a bottle washed ashore by some malevolent tide from the depths of the ocean. It looked like a label, torn roughly from a prescription bottle, with hurried handwritten notes scrawled on the back in black ink that had smudged slightly from the humidity and sand. I dug it out as discreetly as possible, my fingers trembling uncontrollably as I unfolded it under the cover of my wedding program, my breath catching in my throat like a fish on a hook. The words hit me like a rogue wave crashing against the shore, knocking the air from my lungs and leaving me gasping. "Dilute child's inhaler with saline substitute. Swap labels. Table 4, beach setup." My blood ran cold, turning to ice in my veins, despite the sweltering heat that made sweat bead on my forehead. Tommy's inhaler, the one he relied on for his asthma attacks, the lifeline that kept him breathing during his worst moments when his chest tightened like a vice, was safely tucked in my purse, prescribed just last week by his pediatrician after a routine checkup. Who would tamper with it? And why on earth would they do something so cruel, so calculated, on what should have been a day of pure joy and celebration? I looked at my grandson, his innocent face now pale with worry, his lips quivering slightly, and the realization dawned on me like a dark cloud blocking the sun. This wasn't a childish prank or a simple misunderstanding from a confused kid. This was attempted murder, a calculated plot to harm an innocent child on what should have been a day of joy, a betrayal that cut deeper than any knife. Let me take you back. Flashback to 3 years ago, when our world first shattered into irreparable pieces, leaving scars that time could never fully heal, scars that still ache on rainy days. Emily had been happily married to Ryan, Tommy's father, a kind-hearted mechanic from the coastal town of Jacksonville, where the beaches are less crowded and the pace of life is slower. They were high school sweethearts, the kind of couple everyone envied, with inside jokes and shared dreams, building a simple but beautiful life in a cozy bungalow with a white picket fence, a tire swing hanging from an old oak tree in the backyard that creaked in the wind, and a garden full of Emily's favorite sunflowers that bloomed brightly every summer. Ryan adored Tommy from the moment he was born, teaching him how to throw a baseball with perfect form in the yard under the hot sun, telling elaborate bedtime stories about pirates sailing the treacherous Florida Keys in search of buried treasure, complete with accents and dramatic pauses, and always making time for family despite his demanding job that left him exhausted. But Ryan had a secret battle, one that started innocently enough with painkillers prescribed after a devastating work injury that left him with chronic back pain that never seemed to ease, pain that woke him in the night and made simple tasks agony. The addiction crept in slowly, like a fog rolling in from the sea, obscuring everything in its path, but it consumed him completely, turning the man we loved into a shadow of himself. One fateful night, after a long and grueling shift at the auto shop, where he worked overtime to provide for his family, he overdosed in their bathroom, collapsing on the cold tile floor with a thud that Emily heard from the living room. Emily found him there, lifeless, the pill bottle empty beside him, like a silent accusation of failure, her screams echoing through the house. The paramedics arrived too late, their sirens wailing through the quiet neighborhood like a lament, but there was nothing they could do to bring him back. The grief was unbearable, a crushing weight that threatened to drown us all in its depths, pulling us under like a riptide. Emily spiraled into a deep depression, barely able to get out of bed some days, her eyes hollow with loss and her movements mechanical. I moved in to help, becoming Tommy's rock in the storm, taking him to school every morning with his backpack slung over his shoulder, packed with his favorite snacks, managing his frequent asthma appointments where doctors poked and prodded him with cold instruments, and holding Emily tightly as she cried herself to sleep night after night, her sobs muffled in my shoulder. "Mom, how do I go on without him? How do I raise Tommy alone in this world?" She'd sob into my shoulder, her voice breaking like waves on rocks, her body shaking with sorrow. I'd stroke her hair gently and whisper, "One day at a time, honey. We do it for Tommy. He's our light in this darkness, the reason we keep going." Slowly, painfully, Emily began to rebuild her life, piece by piece, like putting together a puzzle with missing edges. She landed a job as a nurse at a local clinic in Tampa, where the hustle and bustle of helping others gave her a purpose again, a way to channel her pain into something positive. It was there that she met Marcus, who seemed like a knight in shining armor at first, with his white coat and confident stride. He swept her off her feet with romantic dinners at upscale seaside restaurants overlooking the Gulf, where the waiters knew him by name, surprise weekend getaways to luxurious spas with ocean views, and promises of a stable, secure future where she wouldn't have to worry about money or loneliness ever again, painting pictures of a life full of travel and comfort. But I always sensed something off about him. His flashy Rolex watch that seemed out of place for a doctor on a salary, the way he'd dodge questions about his finances with a charming laugh and a change of subject, or the occasional tense phone calls he'd take in another room, his voice lowered to a whisper. Back to the wedding day, the present moment that felt like a dream turning into a nightmare with each passing second. As the vows wrapped up and the guests erupted in applause, clapping their hands with genuine happiness and cheers, I couldn't join in the celebration, my hands frozen in my lap. My mind was racing faster than the jet skis on the water, piecing together the puzzle with frantic urgency. Who had access to Tommy's inhaler? I'd packed up myself that morning in our hotel room, double-checking the dosage as I always did with careful eyes. Marcus had stopped by briefly to check on the little guy, as he put it with that disarming grin that now seemed sinister and forced, patting Tommy on the head a bit too roughly, his fingers lingering just a second too long. Could it be him? The thought seemed crazy at the time. He was a doctor, sworn by the Hippocratic Oath to do no harm, to save lives, not end them in cold blood. But the label mentioned a saline substitute, something that looked harmless but would be deadly for an asthmatic like Tommy, as it wouldn't deliver the vital albuterol needed to open his airways during an attack, leading to suffocation. It was a perfect crime, disguised as an accident, something that could be blamed on the salty sea air or stress. I slipped the crumpled paper into my pocket, my hands still shaking like leaves in the wind, and scanned the crowd with new eyes, searching for clues and faces I thought I knew. There was Sarah, Emily's co-worker from the clinic, a warm 34-year-old nurse with a smattering of freckles across her nose and a perpetual ponytail that bounced when she walked, always quick with a comforting smile or a joke to lighten the mood in tense situations. Sarah had been Emily's lifeline after Ryan's death, bringing over homemade casseroles filled with cheesy goodness on tough days, casseroles made from family recipes passed down generations, and offering to babysit Tommy so Emily could have a moment to breathe or attend therapy sessions. I'd noticed over the years how Sarah looked at Emily sometimes with a softness and longing that went beyond simple friendship, a gaze full of unspoken words, unspoken affection, perhaps even love, hidden behind friendly gestures and shared laughs. She caught my eye now from across the sand, her brow furrowed in concern as if she could sense my distress from afar, her nurse's intuition kicking in like a sixth sense. The reception kicked off under a large white tent pitched on the beach, with cables draped in nautical-themed linens in shades of navy blue and white, reminiscent of the sea, and centerpieces of starfish, sand dollars, and flickering candles that cast a romantic glow as the sun began to set, painting everything in golden light. Waiters circulated efficiently with trays laden with fresh shrimp cocktails dipped in tangy cocktail sauce, crispy conch fritters fried to golden perfection with a side of remoulade, and other appetizers that filled the air with mouth-watering aromas that made stomachs growl. The scent of grilled mahi-mahi wafted from the outdoor kitchen, mixing with the salty sea air and the faint smell of sunscreen. Tommy clung to me like a life raft in choppy waters, refusing to eat anything from the trays, his small hand never leaving mine as if I was his anchor in the chaos. "Grandma, my chest feels tight," he murmured softly, his voice barely audible over the chatter and laughter. Panic surged through me like an electric shock, my mind racing to the worst-case scenario. Was this the start of an asthma attack, triggered by the stress? Or something more sinister that had already been set in motion? I pulled out his inhaler from my purse, examining it closely under the table with squinted eyes. The label looked slightly off, the print a tad blurry, the edges not quite aligned, as if it had been hastily reprinted and swapped by unsteady hands. I excused myself from the table, my legs feeling like jelly as I headed to the resort's lobby, my heart pounding in my ears like a drumbeat that drowned out everything else. Using my phone with fingers that wouldn't stop trembling, I called the pharmacy back home in Tampa, the number memorized from countless refills. "This is Betty Thompson. Can you please confirm the prescription for Tommy Thompson's albuterol inhaler? And describe the label for me in detail." The pharmacist verified the details patiently, reading from their records. But when I described the label I had, she paused, her voice turning serious and concerned. "Ma'am, that doesn't match our records at all. Our labels have a specific hologram seal for authenticity to prevent counterfeits. If it's missing or altered, it might be tampered with. You should contact the authorities immediately and get that child to a doctor." With this damning evidence in hand, I returned to the tent, my resolve hardening like the ancient coral reefs just offshore, unyielding and strong against the waves. Marcus was toasting with the guests, his arm draped possessively around Emily's shoulders, who beamed with unbridled joy, her face glowing under the lights, oblivious to the horror unfolding. But I knew the truth now, and it burned like fire in my chest, a fire that demanded action. Digging deeper in my memory, I recalled whispers about Marcus's gambling debts, overheard at a family dinner months ago when his phone buzzed incessantly with urgent calls from creditors. He brushed off as work-related nuisances, his face flushing slightly. He saw Tommy as a financial burden, with his ongoing medical bills piling up like sand dunes after a storm, eating into his lavish lifestyle. Eliminate the kid in what looked like a tragic accident, cash in on Emily's life insurance policies set up after Ryan's death to secure Tommy's future, and start fresh with no loose ends, no more payments for treatments. It was monstrous, the kind of evil that hides behind a white coat and a smile, preying on the vulnerable. As the sun dipped lower on the horizon, casting long, ominous shadows across the beach that stretched like fingers reaching for us from the dark, I approached Sarah discreetly, pulling her aside behind a tall palm tree swaying in the breeze. "I need your help right now," I whispered urgently, showing her the crumpled label and explaining my suspicions in hushed tones, my voice cracking with emotion. Her eyes widened in sheer horror, her hand flying to her mouth as she gasped, "Oh my God, Betty, I've seen Marcus at the clinic prescribing odd things that didn't add up, things like extra supplies without patients. Let me check the records quickly before it's too late." Sarah, with her authorized access to the clinic's database via her secure phone app, pulled up Marcus's patient files with swift fingers, scrolling through pages of data. There it was, clear as day. A requisition for saline solution dated just yesterday under a fake patient name that matched nothing in the system, a name that was obviously fabricated. Together, we marched back to the head table with determined steps, the sand shifting under our feet like the ground beneath our family, just as the officiant announced with a flourish, "You may now kiss the bride." The guests leaned forward in anticipation, smiles on their faces, but before their lips could meet in what was supposed to be a sealed promise of forever, I shouted at the top of my lungs,
Stop! This wedding is a lie, a dangerous farce that could kill my grandson. Gasps echoed through the tent like a collective inhale, the steel drums falling silent as if struck mute. Emily turned to me, her face a mask of confusion and hurt, her veil slipping slightly. Mom, what's wrong? This is my special day. Why are you doing this?
I held up the label triumphantly, along with the phone screen displaying the pharmacy records and clinic logs, my hands steady despite the adrenaline. Marcus tampered with Tommy's inhaler. He planned to trigger a fatal asthma attack to pay off his secret debts and cash in on the insurance, all while pretending to love us. Chaos erupted like a sudden storm, guests whispering frantically, some pulling out their phones to record the unfolding drama for social media or evidence. Marcus's face drained of all color, turning as white as the sand underfoot. That's absurd. Betty, you're hysterical from the heat or the emotion of the day. But Sarah stepped forward boldly, her voice steady and accusatory. The clinic logs don't lie, Marcus. You ordered the saline yourself under a false name. It's all here in black and white. The guests murmured in shock, the festive atmosphere evaporating like mist in the sun, replaced by tension thick as fog. Emily's world crumbled before my eyes as she confronted him, her voice breaking with betrayal. Is it true, Marcus? Tell me it's not, please. Tears streamed down her face, smudging her carefully applied makeup. Marcus stammered incoherently, his charm cracking like thin ice, then bolted toward the beach in a desperate run, his shoes kicking up sand in clouds. But the resort security, alerted by the commotion and a quick call from a guest, tackled him near the water's edge, holding him down until help arrived. The police arrived shortly after, their sirens blaring over the crashing waves like a siren's call of justice, arresting him on the spot for attempted harm to a minor and tampering with medication, reading him his rights as the sun set. In the immediate aftermath, Emily annulled the marriage before the ink was even dry on the certificate, her heart broken, but her eyes finally opened to the truth that had been hidden. Sarah was there every step of the way, holding her hand through the tears and legal proceedings, offering tissues and words of comfort, eventually confessing her long-held feelings in a quiet moment on the beach as the stars came out. I've loved you since the day we met at the clinic, Emily. I never said anything because I didn't want to complicate things, but I can't hide it anymore after today. Emily, after taking time to heal and reflect on her life, reciprocated the affection, and they built a new life together. Stable, loving, and genuine, with Tommy thriving under their combined care and attention, attending family therapy to process the trauma. I watched them from my cozy porch in Tampa, sipping tea as the sun set, knowing that from the depths of betrayal had come a true, resilient family bond that no one could break, a bond forged in fire. But let's rewind even further and dive deeper into how it all began, because this story isn't just about one fateful day on the beach, it's about the cracks that form over time in relationships, the warning signs we ignore in the name of hope and happiness, and the strength it takes to face the truth until it nearly destroys us all, leaving lessons etched in our souls. It started 5 years ago in the humid, sticky suburbs of Tampa, where Emily and Ryan lived in a modest ranch-style home with tall palm trees shading the cracked driveway and a front yard dotted with colorful bougainvillea bushes that attracted butterflies. Ryan was the type of guy who'd drop everything to fix your car for free if you were a neighbor down on your luck, always with a toolbox in hand and a joke ready to ease the tension, his laugh booming like thunder. He worked long hours at the auto shop, coming home with grease under his nails and a tired but genuine smile that lit up the room like sunshine. Emily, fresh out of nursing school and full of ambition, worked irregular shifts at the local hospital, coming home exhausted, but always finding energy to scoop up baby Tommy and dance around the kitchen to old Motown records blasting from an old radio on the counter. I visited often, driving over from my small apartment in the city, bringing homemade key lime pie baked from scratch with fresh limes from my garden, and sharing stories from my days as a school teacher, where I'd shaped young minds for over 30 years with patience and wisdom. "Grandma's here!" Tommy would squeal with delight, toddling into my arms with open joy, his chubby cheeks dimpling. Life was simple and sweet, like biting into a ripe Florida orange picked right off the tree, juice dripping down your chin and sweet stickiness. But Ryan's injury changed everything in an instant, a moment that replayed in my nightmares. A heavy engine block slipped during a routine repair, crushing his back and leaving him in agonizing pain that doctors struggled to manage with physical therapy and medications. They prescribed opioids to ease the suffering, and what started as necessary relief turned into a gripping addiction that he hid from us all, his eyes growing distant. Emily noticed the changes first. The missed dinners where his plate sat cold, the empty pill bottles hidden in drawers behind socks, the distant look in his eyes as if he was somewhere else. She begged him to get help, arranging rehab appointments and supporting him through withdrawal attempts that left him sweating and shaking. But pride and shame got in the way every time, his stubbornness a wall. "I can handle it on my own," he'd snap, popping another pill when he thought no one was looking, his hands trembling slightly. The night he overdosed, Emily was working a late shift at the hospital, saving other lives while her own fell apart in pieces. I was babysitting Tommy, who was 4 then, reading him The Very Hungry Caterpillar for the 100th time, his little fingers pointing at the pictures with glee, when the phone rang with a shrill tone that cut through the air like a knife. It was the hospital. "Mrs. Thompson, it's about your son-in-law. There's been an incident at home." My stomach dropped like a stone in the ocean, a sinking feeling that made the room spin. Ryan was gone, found by Emily when she got home early, foam at his mouth, eyes vacant and unseeing. The paramedics had tried everything, but it was too late to save him. The grief hit like a hurricane, tearing through our lives with relentless force, uprooting everything we knew. Emily spiraled into a deep, dark depression, barely able to get out of bed. Her once vibrant spirit dimmed like a light bulb flickering out. I moved in full time, leaving my own home behind to be there for them, to handle the everyday chaos, the bills stacking up on the kitchen table like accusations, the laundry piling in baskets in the hallway, the endless doctor visits for Tommy's newly diagnosed asthma, which doctors attributed to a combination of genetic factors from Ryan's side, and the stress of losing his father so young, the trauma manifesting in his little body. "He needs stability and routine," the pediatrician advised sternly during one appointment, prescribing the inhaler that would become his constant companion, a small blue device that fit in his pocket. Emily threw herself into work at the clinic to escape the pain, avoiding the home where memories of Ryan lurked in every corner. The toolbox in the garage gathering dust, the baseball glove on the shelf with grass stains, the empty side of the bed that she couldn't bear to sleep on. That's where Sarah came in, like a ray of sunshine breaking through the clouds after a storm, bringing warmth and hope. She was Emily's colleague at the clinic, a bubbly redhead with a knack for making even the grumpiest patients laugh with her quick wit and kind heart, her energy infectious. "Hey, Em, brought you some coffee. Extra cream, just how you like it," she'd say, sliding into the break room with a warm smile that could light up the darkest day, her freckles dancing. Sarah had her own scars. A messy divorce from a cheating husband who left her heartbroken and distrustful. But she channeled that pain into helping others, becoming a pillar of support for Emily through the worst times. She started coming over to the house regularly, playing board games like Candyland with Tommy, who adored her, and started calling her Auntie Sarah without prompting, his face lighting up when she arrived. I'd watch from the kitchen as Emily light up around her, a spark of life returning to her eyes that I hadn't seen since Ryan's passing, a genuine connection forming. There was something there, a bond deeper than friendship, but neither of them acknowledged it, at least not then, keeping it buried like treasure. Then Marcus entered the picture, changing the dynamics in ways I couldn't have predicted, like a cloud blocking the sun. He was a guest lecturer at the clinic, teaching advanced seminars on cardiac care with an air of authority that commanded respect from everyone in the room. Tall and confident, with a luxury Mercedes parked in the lot that turned heads with its shine, he asked Emily out for coffee one afternoon after a lecture, charming her with his intellect and stories of saving lives in the OR under pressure. It escalated quickly to dinner at a fancy spot overlooking Biscayne Bay, where the lights twinkled on the water like stars in the night sky. "Mom, he's amazing," Emily gushed over the phone that night, her voice filled with excitement for the first time in years, a lilt I missed. "He gets me, understands what I've been through with Ryan." I smiled through my worries, happy to see her happy after so much sorrow, but something nagged at me like a splinter. Marcus flashed cash like it was endless, expensive gifts like diamond earrings for Emily's birthday that sparkled under lights, weekend getaways to the Florida Keys where they'd stay in oceanfront suites with private balconies. Where did all the money come from for a doctor? I overheard him on the phone once during the family visit. "I'll pay you back. Just give me more time. The big win is coming soon." Red flags waved furiously in my mind, signaling danger, but Emily was smitten, blind to the potential dangers that lurked. As their relationship deepened over the months, evolving from dates to living together, Marcus proposed on a private yacht at sunset, the diamond ring sparkling like the ocean waves below, a moment Emily described as magical. Tommy was wary from the start, his child's intuition sharp as a tack. "He doesn't play with me like Daddy did," he'd confide in me during bedtime stories, his voice small and sad, his eyes downcast. Marcus tolerated the boy but made subtle complaints about the costs associated with his care, his tone casual but cutting. "Asthma meds are pricey, Em. Ever think about switching to a better insurance plan or cutting back on those specialist visits that cost a fortune?" The digs built up slowly, like grains of sand forming a dune that blocked the view, but Emily dismissed them as stress from his job, defending him. The wedding planning was extravagant, beyond anything I'd seen. The beach resort venue with its pristine sands and luxury amenities, a live steel drum band for the ceremony to set the tropical mood, fireworks planned for after dark to light up the night sky in bursts of color. I helped with the invitations, folding them carefully and addressing envelopes with my best handwriting, but an unease gnawed at me like a persistent mosquito biting at night. One night, about a month before the wedding, Tommy had a minor asthma scare after playing in the yard, chasing butterflies under the palm trees with glee. Marcus helped by grabbing the inhaler from the counter, administering a puff with what seemed like care, but later, when I checked it discreetly, the device felt lighter than usual, as if some of the medication had been removed or replaced. Coincidence? I brushed it off as paranoia, telling myself not to ruin Emily's happiness with unfounded suspicions that could tear us apart. Now, at the wedding, with the crumpled label clutched in my hand like a smoking gun from a crime scene, it all clicked into place with horrifying clarity, the pieces fitting together like a jigsaw. Marcus's debts were deeper than I knew. Casino losses from secret trips to Atlantic City, bad investments in shady real estate deals that went sour, leaving him drowning in red ink. Tommy's life insurance policy, set up prudently after Ryan's death to ensure his future education and care, was a hefty sum that could wipe the slate clean and fund his lifestyle. Eliminate the burden in what appeared to be a tragic asthma attack exacerbated by the beach air and excitement, cash in, and start fresh with Emily, none the wiser, blaming fate. It was a sickening plan, the kind that keeps you up at night wondering how someone could be so cold and calculating. Sarah and I gathered more proof under the tent, her fingers flying over her phone as she accessed, legally of course, the clinic emails and inventory logs with her credentials. "Look at this," she whispered, showing me the screen with wide eyes. "He ordered the saline under a false patient name, and there's an email trail to a printer for custom labels dated last week. He's done for," she said, fire in her eyes, her loyalty to Emily fueling her determination like fuel to a flame. Interrupting the kiss was cinematic in its drama, the guests frozen in shock, the waves crashing in the background like applause for the revelation of justice, the air thick with tension. The post-wedding chaos was a whirlwind of emotions and actions. Marcus faced serious charges: tampering with prescription medication, attempted manslaughter on a child, fraud, his medical license revoked pending trial. He confessed in court months later, his suave demeanor cracked like a broken mirror, blaming financial pressure from bad decisions, as if that excused endangering an innocent boy for personal gain. Emily testified against him, her voice steady and strong as steel, despite the tears welling up, her hands clenched. "You almost took my son from me," she said, staring him down with unyielding gaze. "All for money, you monster?" Healing came slowly, like the tide receding to reveal hidden treasures on the shore. Beautiful shells washed clean. Emily and Sarah started dating quietly at first, sharing coffee dates and walks on the beach where it all unfolded, talking for hours. Then openly, their love blooming like the orchids at the wedding, vibrant and true. They bought a charming house near the beach in Tampa, with a big backyard for Tommy to play safely without fear, and a guest room for me whenever I wanted to visit and bake pies. Tommy's asthma improved with better management and less stress, the attacks fewer, and he flourished under their care, his laughter returning full force, like music. "I have 2 mommies now," he'd say, proudly to his friends at school, his blue eyes sparkling with joy again. Looking back from my Tampa porch, sipping iced tea as the sun sets over the bay in a blaze of color, that beachside betrayal taught us all about resilience and the true meaning of family. It's not about blood or perfect appearances. It's about protection, love, and standing up against the darkness, no matter the cost. If you're watching this video, hit that like button if you've ever overcome betrayal in your life. Subscribe to the channel for more real-life stories of triumph over adversity that inspire. And drop a comment below. What would you do in my shoes if you discovered such a plot at a family wedding? Thanks for joining me today. Stay strong out there, and remember, the truth always comes ashore eventually, no matter how deep it's buried.